The rain on Rithor Station was not real rain, but it still felt cold when it hit the skin. Thin streams of water dripped from the rusted metal ceiling, pooling on the cracked floor. Neon lights flickered above the open slave market where cages lined both sides of the alley. Inside each one, people, or what passed for people, sat in silence, chained, waiting for someone to buy them. The smell was a mix of metal, damp cloth, and hopelessness. Captain Daniel Rourke hated this place. He had only come to the lower decks to find a replacement part for his ship's engine. But as he passed the rows of cages, he noticed a pair of eyes following him. Silver blue eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. She was kneeling in a small cage at the far end of the alley. Her wrists were bound with heavy chains and a metal collar circled her neck. The chain from the collar ran to a hook in the wall, short enough to keep her from standing fully. Her skin was a pale shade that seemed almost luminescent, and her long silver hair clung to her face from the dampness. She was not dressed in rags like the others. Her clothes, though torn, looked like they had once been made for someone of importance. As he walked closer, she straightened, eyes locked on him. "Will you take me with you, human?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Daniel stopped. "You're talking to me?" "Yes," she said quickly, her gaze not leaving his face. "Buy me, please. I will work. I will serve. Just don't leave me here." Her voice carried something different from the usual desperate pleas he had heard before. It was not just fear. It was urgency, like she knew something bad was coming. The merchant sitting beside her cage leaned back in his chair. He was a heavy-set alien with dark scale-covered skin and small yellow eyes. "You want her, human? She's expensive. Royal blood. Or at least she was before her planet fell." Daniel frowned. "Royal?" The merchant smirked. "Princess of the Velshar, if you believe her story." "I don't, but she's strong, healthy, and trained. Would make a fine servant or whatever else you want." The girl flinched at the last words, her chains rattling. "I am not lying," she said firmly. "And if you don't take me now, you won't see me again." Daniel studied her face. She didn't look broken, not yet. Her eyes still held fire, though it was hidden behind exhaustion. "Why me?" he asked. "Because," she said softly, "I can see you're not like them." Before Daniel could answer, a loud crash came from the far end of the alley. 3 armed figures pushed through the market crowd, tall, black-armored soldiers with weapons slung across their backs. Their helmets had no visors, just smooth black plates with a single red slit for a sensor. The crowd went quiet. Even the merchants avoided their gaze. The merchant beside the girl stiffened. "Not them again," he muttered. Daniel glanced at him. "Who are they?" "Hunters," the merchant said. "Military bounty takers. They've been sniffing around here for days. Looking for someone." The girl's chains rattled again. She leaned forward, her voice urgent. "If they see me here, they'll take me. You can't let that happen." The hunters moved methodically, checking each cage as they passed. Their footsteps echoed on the wet metal floor. Daniel could feel the girl's eyes on him, pleading silently. He wasn't sure why, but something in his gut told him she wasn't lying. And if the hunters took her, she wouldn't survive. "How much?" Daniel asked suddenly. The merchant blinked. "Now you're interested? How much?" Daniel repeated, sharper this time. The merchant tapped at a small datapad. 5,000 credits. Daniel almost laughed. "That's robbery." "Royal blood is never cheap," the merchant said. The hunters were getting closer. 2 cages away. The girl's breathing quickened. "Please," she whispered again. Daniel cursed under his breath and tossed his credit chip onto the merchant's desk. 4,000? Take it or leave it." The merchant hesitated, then grabbed the chip. "Fine, she's yours. Get her out of here before you bring trouble." The merchant unlocked the cage and unhooked the chain from the wall. The girl stepped out slowly, her legs stiff from kneeling so long. The collar and wrist chain stayed on, but the chain lengthened so she could walk. Daniel put a hand on her arm to guide her away, but she froze, glancing over her shoulder. The hunters had reached, the empty cage beside hers. One of them turned his head slightly as if sensing her. Daniel didn't wait. He pulled her into the nearest side corridor, keeping his pace fast but steady. The sound of heavy boots followed. "Keep your head down," he said. "I told you they'd come," she whispered back. They reached a cargo lift at the end of the corridor. Daniel slammed the control panel and the doors began to close just as the hunters turned the corner. One raised a weapon, but the doors sealed before he could fire. Inside the lift, the girl leaned against the yaoi while breathing hard. "You don't know what you've just done," she said. "Probably not," Daniel admitted. "But I know I just saved your life." She looked at him, and for the first time, her eyes softened. "Then I will repay you. Even if it costs me everything." The lift began to rise, carrying them away from the slave market and the hunters below. But Daniel had a feeling that whatever he had stepped into was only beginning. The cargo lift stopped with a low hiss. Daniel stepped out first, scanning the quiet corridor above the market. It was cleaner here, less rust, less smell of damp metal, but still far from safe. The girl followed, her chains clinking softly with each step. She kept her head lowered, but her eyes moved constantly, watching for movement. He led her through winding passages toward docking bay 7, where his ship was waiting. The hum of engines and the faint tang of fuel told him they were getting close. Still, he didn't relax. The hunters would not give up easily. When they reached a small maintenance hallway, Daniel stopped. "We need to talk before we step on my ship," he said. "Who are you really, and why do they want you?" She looked up at him, her silver blue eyes catching the dim light. "My name is Arya Velshar. I am the last heir to the Velshar throne." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Royalty, huh? And I suppose those hunters are after the reward for returning you?" Arya shook her head. "It's worse than that. They don't want me alive. Unless they can control me. My blood can activate something, an ancient weapon my people once sealed away. If they take me, they will use me to open it." Daniel studied her face. She didn't seem like she was making it up. There was a weight in her voice, a seriousness that didn't come from desperation alone. "And why should I believe any of this?" "Because," she said quietly, "the moment they realize you have me, they will come for you too. You'll see I'm telling the truth when they don't." "Stop," he sighed. "I was hoping for a quiet job after this port." "You won't have it," she said. The distant sound of heavy boots echoed through the hallway. Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Guess we're out of time." They reached the docking bay doors just as two black-armored figures entered from the far side. Daniel pulled Arya behind a stack of cargo crates. "Stay down," he whispered. Her chains rattled softly as she crouched. "You can't fight them here. The bay is too open." Then we run. When the guards moved toward the center of the bay, Daniel led her in a wide circle, keeping low. They reached his ship, a small but fast freighter named Silver Edge, without drawing attention. He keyed in the hatch code, and the ramp lowered with a quiet hiss. "Inside now," he urged. The moment they stepped aboard, Daniel locked the hatch and moved straight to the cockpit. Arya followed, staying close but keeping her eyes wide, scanning every detail of the ship like she was memorizing it. He slid into the pilot's seat and began the launch sequence. The hum of the engines filled the cabin, growing deeper as the power built. But before they could lift off, the ship's console flashed a warning. "External lockdown engaged." Arya's eyes widened. "They've sealed the bay." Daniel cursed. "Then we're doing this the hard way." He switched controls to manual and powered the rear thrusters. The ship shook violently, then the blast doors at the far end of the bay began to part under the force. Metal screeched, alarms blared. A black-armored hunter appeared on the hangar floor, raising a weapon. Daniel jerked the controls, lifting the ship higher. The first blast from the hunter's gun grazed the hull, leaving a molten scar across the side. The Silver Edge shot out of the bay into open space, the stars stretching into lines as Daniel engaged the drives. Only when the station shrank behind them did he allow himself to breathe. "You weren't lying," he said finally. "I told you," Arya replied. "They will chase us until I am theirs, or dead." Daniel turned to look at her. She was sitting in the co-pilot's seat now, her chains still on, her posture straight despite everything. If what you say about this weapon is true, then you're not just my problem. You're everyone's problem. Arya met his gaze steadily. Then you understand why I asked you to take me. You're not like the others. You won't hand me over for a price. He smirked. Don't be so sure. I haven't decided yet. Silence filled the cockpit for a moment. The soft hum of the drives was the only sound. Then Daniel asked, "Where's this weapon now?" "Hidden," Arya said, "deep in the ruins of Velshar Prime. My family locked it away centuries ago. Only royal blood can open the chamber." "And the hunters?" "They work for someone who wants it awakened." Daniel leaned back. "Then we have two choices. Keep running until they catch us, or go there first and make sure no one uses it." Arya tilted her head. "You'd risk going to my world?" "Better than waiting for trouble to find us," he said. "And I have a feeling trouble won't wait long." Before she could answer, the ship's console beeped. A proximity alert. Daniel tapped the screen and his jaw tightened. 3 hunter ships had dropped out of warp directly ahead, blocking their path. Arya's voice was calm but firm. "You can still hand me over. They might let you live." Daniel looked at her, like she was insane. "Not my style." The hunter ships moved into attack formation, their weapons charging. Daniel's hands tightened on the controls. "Hold on, princess. Things are about to get loud." The hunter ships moved like predators in the dark. 3 black warcraft, sleek and sharp, their hulls glowing with thin red lines. They spread out in a triangular formation, boxing the silver edge in with nowhere to run. Daniel's grip on the flight controls tightened. "They're faster than you," Arya said quietly, her silver blue eyes locked on the nearest ship. "Maybe," Daniel replied him, "but I'm smarter." The first hunter ship fired. Blue-white plasma streaked past the cockpit, close enough to make the hull shudder. Daniel threw the ship into a sharp roll, the stars spinning wildly outside. The second hunter vessel opened fire, bolts slamming into the shields. Warning lights flared red on the console. "Shields at 70%, the ship's computer droned. "That's fine," Daniel muttered. "I only need them for 60. Arya clutched the side of the console as Daniel dove between the 2 nearest hunters, forcing them to break formation. The third moved to intercept, but Daniel cut the thrusters and swung the silver edge into a sudden reverse spin. The maneuver threw them both forward in their seats, but the sudden shift put the hunter ship directly in front of their guns. Daniel squeezed the trigger. Twin streams of hot plasma tore into the hunter's shields. The black ship peeled away, venting sparks into the void. "One down," Daniel said through clenched teeth. "2 still chasing," Arya replied, her voice steady. The remaining hunters didn't back off. They came in harder, weaving to avoid Daniel's fire. Another hit slammed into the silver edge's rear shields. The warning tone was sharper this time. Arya turned to him. "You can't win like this, not against their weapons." "Got a better idea?" "Yes," she said, her voice calm but intense. "But you won't like it." Daniel risked a glance at her. "I'm already not liking it." She leaned closer. "I can disrupt their targeting systems if I'm close enough." "Close enough?" "They need a clear lock on me for their control tech to work. If I let them sense my presence, I can send something back through their link." Daniel stared at her. "That sounds like the worst plan I've ever heard." "It will work," she said firmly. "But you have to trust me." The second hunter ship moved in from the right, firing a steady barrage. Daniel gritted his teeth. He didn't have many options left. "Fine. You get your chance. Just don't die." Arya stood, chains clinking softly, and moved to the center of the cockpit. She closed her eyes, holding her bound hands out in front of her. Her breathing slowed. The crystal embedded in her collar began to glow faintly, then brighter, until a thin silver light surrounded her. The console in front of Daniel flickered. Static hissed in the comms. Outside, the hunter ships faltered, their formation breaking as if they'd lost focus. The targeting alarm stopped. They can't see you clearly, Daniel realized. They can, Arya corrected, her voice distant. They just can't aim at you. Daniel seized the chance. He pushed the silver edge into a steep climb, looping, behind the nearest hunter. Its shields were still recovering from her disruption. He opened fire, ripping through the rear plating and detonating one of its engines. The explosion lit the darkness for a brief moment before the ship spun out of control. The last hunter hesitated, then turned sharply and jumped to warp. The silence after the fight was heavy. Daniel exhaled slowly, his shoulders relaxing for the first time since they'd launched. He glanced at Arya. The glow around her faded and she swayed on her feet. He was out of his seat in an instant, catching her before she could fall. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded weakly. "It takes strength, more than I want to use." "Then don't make a habit of it," Daniel said. Back in her seat, Arya leaned her head back and closed her eyes. "Now you see why they want me alive. My blood can open their weapon, but it can also stop them from using others against me." Daniel frowned. "And now they know I've seen it too." "They won't. Stop," she said softly. "They'll send more, stronger ones." Daniel leaned back in his chair. "Then we're not just running anymore. If they're going to hunt us, I'd rather choose the ground we fight on." Arya opened her eyes. "What are you thinking?" "We go to your world, Velshar Prime. We get to the weapon first. If we can't destroy it, we hide it somewhere no one will find it." Her expression tightened. "That world is dangerous. The ruins aren't empty. My people left guardians behind." Daniel smirked faintly. "I'll take ancient traps over hunters any day." The silver edge angled toward deep space, the stars stretching into streaks as Daniel engaged the warp drives. In the quiet hum of the cabin, Arya spoke again. "If we reach the weapon, you must promise me something." "What?" "That you will end it, even if it means ending me." Daniel turned to look at her, but she was staring straight ahead, her jaw set. "Let's just get there first," he said. "We'll talk about promises later." Velshar Prime looked dead from orbit. A gray-brown planet covered in scars, its clouds tinged red from the burned atmosphere. Vast impact craters dotted the surface, and the oceans were dark, almost black. There were no active cities, no signs of life, only ruins that stretched for miles. Daniel slowed the silver edge as they entered the atmosphere. The ship shook slightly from turbulence, and heat licked across the forward windows. Arya sat beside him, her silver blue eyes fixed on the land below. "It was beautiful once," she said quietly. "The towers shone white, and the sky was clear. Now, it's only ghosts." Daniel glanced at her. "We'll get what we came for and leave. I'm not here for sightseeing." She nodded, but he saw her fingers tighten on the armrest. They landed on a flat stretch of cracked stone near the edge of a ruined city. Jagged buildings leaned at odd angles, their walls half collapsed. Shards of broken statues littered the streets. The air smelled faintly of burnt metal, and a thin wind whistled through the gaps in the ruins. Daniel stepped down the ramp first, rifle in hand. Arya followed, her chain still on but with a longer lead chain to walk more easily. She kept her head up, scanning the shadows between buildings. "What kind of guardians are we talking about?" Daniel asked as they moved into the city. "They are not alive in the way you understand," she said. "They were made to last. Machines, built with my people's knowledge and bound to the weapons chamber. They will recognize my blood and test whoever comes with me." "That's encouraging," Daniel muttered. The streets were silent except for the crunch of their boots on dust. They passed murals carved into the walls, faded images of tall, elegant figures standing beside starships. Many were slashed through or defaced. Arya slowed as they reached a wide plaza. In the center stood a massive stone arch, its surface covered in glowing silver lines that pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. "This is the outer gate," she said. "Once we pass through, the guardians will awaken." Daniel circled the arch cautiously. "Any chance we can sneak past them?" "No," she said simply. She stepped toward the arch. The silver lines brightened as she approached, and a low hum filled the air. The wind stopped. The shadows deepened. Then the ground shook. Stone slabs cracked and dust rose as massive shapes pulled themselves free from beneath the plaza. 4 figures, each twice Daniel's height, formed out of metal and stone. Their bodies were shaped like armored soldiers, but their faces were smooth masks with a single silver eye in the center. Each carried a weapon that looked part spear, part blade, glowing with pale light. "Guardians," Arya said softly. They moved without haste, spreading to block the arch. The silver eyes pulsed in unison, and a voice, not from any mouth, echoed in the air. "Blood of Velshar, you may pass. Your companion must prove his worth," Daniel muttered under his breath. "Of course I must." Arya turned to him. "If you fail, they will kill you." "Good talk," he said, stepping forward. The nearest guardian lunged first. Daniel dodged aside, the spear's blade slicing the air where he had stood. He fired his rifle, but the shots glanced off the guardian's armor. "They are not weak to your weapons," Arya called. "Any tips you'd like to share sooner?" Daniel shouted back. She hesitated. "Their eyes. Strike the eye." Daniel rolled under another sweeping strike and came up behind the guardian. He aimed carefully and fired a single shot into the glowing eye. The guardian froze, light flickering, then collapsed into stillness. "One down," Daniel said, catching his breath. The others advanced together now. Daniel had to keep moving, using the broken stones and statues for cover. One thrust came so close it tore the sleeve of his jacket. He managed to blind the second guardian with a shot to the eye, but the third and fourth pressed harder, forcing him back toward the arch. One spear tip grazed his side, burning like fire. He gritted his teeth and fired point blank at the third's eye. Sparks burst and it fell. The last guardian was faster. Daniel barely dodged its strikes, his shots missing as it twisted unnaturally. Then Arya stepped forward, chains clinking. She cut her palm with a shard of stone and let a drop of her blood fall onto the ground. The guardian froze mid-swing. Its single eye turned from silver to blue, and it slowly lowered its weapon. Blood accepted. Companion worthy. The remaining guardians sank back into the plaza floor, vanishing into the stone as if they had never been there. The glow on the arch flared bright, and the hum deepened. Daniel straightened, breathing hard. "You could have done that from the start?" Arya gave him a faint smile. "Then how would they know if you were worth guarding me?" He shook his head, stepping through the arch with her. Beyond it, a long, dark passage stretched downward, lit by a faint blue glow. The air was cooler here, and the walls were smooth and perfect, untouched by the ruin outside. Arya's voice was quiet. "At the end of this passage lies the chamber. Once we enter, we can't turn back." Daniel checked his rifle. "Good. Let's finish this." The passage sloped downward for what felt like forever. The sound of their footsteps echoed against the smooth walls. The faint blue glow came from thin lines running along the floor, guiding them like a trail. The air smelled clean, untouched by the ruin above. Daniel kept his rifle ready. "You're sure no more guardians are coming?" Arya walked beside him, chains clinking softly. "Once you pass the first trial, no others will block our way. The rest of this is for me." "Comforting," he muttered. The tunnel opened into a vast circular chamber. The ceiling arched high above, lined with silver inlays that caught the blue light and reflected it like starlight. In the center stood a massive pedestal, and on it rested a sphere the size of a man's torso. The sphere pulsed faintly, almost like it was breathing. Inside, shapes swirled, shadows, light, and colors that shifted too fast to follow. "That's it?" Daniel asked. Arya's voice was hushed. "The heart of Velshar. It is not a weapon in the way you think. It is a key to something far worse." Daniel circled the pedestal, studying it. "And you're the only one who can use it?" "Yes. My bloodline was bound to it centuries ago. My ancestors sealed the Starforged, giant war machines capable of destroying entire worlds. This is the only way to wake them. Daniel's jaw tightened. So if we destroy this, the problem's solved. Arya shook her head. No. Destroying the heart would release the lock. Without it, the Starforged would awaken on their own uncontrolled. Before Daniel could answer, a sharp metallic sound echoed through the chamber, like armor scraping stone. He spun, rifle raised. From the shadows at the far end, 3 figures stepped forward. Black armor, red visor slits. Hunters. The one in the lead lowered his weapon slightly. "We knew you'd come here, Princess." His voice was deep and distorted through the helmet. "And we knew the human would help you open the way." Daniel moved to put himself between Arya and the hunters. "You're too late. We're leaving." The hunter tilted his head. "We don't need to take her. If she touches the heart, it will obey the first command it hears. We just have to make sure that command is ours." Arya's chains rattled as she stepped back. "Daniel, if they get close enough when I use it..." "They won't," he said firmly. The lead hunter raised his hand, and the 2 behind him moved fast, splitting to circle around. Daniel opened fire, forcing them to dive for cover behind the pedestal's base. Sparks flew from the impacts, the sound echoing off the chamber walls. The hunters returned fire. Red bolts scorched the stone where Daniel had been a moment before. He ducked behind a support column, keeping one eye on Arya. "Can you move without me?" he called. "Yes, but..." "Then go. Get to the heart." Arya ran, the chain between her wrists swinging. One hunter broke cover and lunged toward her, but Daniel stepped out and fired 3 quick shots into his chest plate. The armor held, but the force knocked the hunter back. The lead hunter fired again, his shot grazing Daniel's shoulder. Pain burned through his arm, but he stayed on his feet. Arya reached the pedestal. She placed her hands on the sphere and the entire chamber changed. The silver inlays on the ceiling flared with white light, and the floor vibrated under their feet. The heart pulsed harder, its glow spilling across Arya's skin. Her silver blue eyes shone and her hair lifted slightly in an unseen wind. The hunters froze. The lead one shouted, "Commanded to serve the order." Arya's voice was steady. "I serve no one who would use this for conquest." The light from the heart flared so bright Daniel had to shield his eyes. A deep sound rolled through the chamber, half mechanical, half alive. The lead hunter realized what was happening. "Stop her," he ordered. Daniel didn't give them the chance. He charged the nearest hunter, slamming him into the wall. The impact knocked the weapon from the alien's hands. Daniel grabbed it and fired point blank, the shot punching through the visor. The hunter fell. When Daniel turned back, Arya was still holding the heart, but her expression had changed. She looked heavier, as if carrying something unseen. "What did you do?" he asked, stepping closer. "I moved it," she said softly. "The heart is no longer here. No one can find it unless I lead them." Daniel blinked. "You can just pick it up and hide it?" "Not with my hands, with my will." The last hunter, seeing his chance lost, activated a device on his wrist. A sharp pulse of energy filled the air and the alien vanished in a shimmer of light. Arya stepped away from the pedestal. "We have to leave. That one will tell the rest where we were. They will come in greater numbers." Daniel nodded, reloading his rifle. "Then we make sure they're too late." They retraced their steps toward the arch. But Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that while they had escaped with the heart's location safe, the game had just changed. The hunters now knew he was part of this, and that meant they wouldn't just chase Arya. They'd come for him too. The ruined city was silent when they stepped back through the arch. The plaza lay empty, the silver lines on the stone now dim. The wind had returned, carrying fine dust that clung to their boots as they moved toward the landing site. Daniel kept his rifle in hand. If that hunter called for backup, they could be here already. Arya walked quickly beside him, her silver blue eyes scanning the rooftops. They won't come on foot. They will wait above, where escape seems impossible. Didn't like the sound of that. When they reached the Silver Edge, Daniel powered the engines before the ramp was fully closed. The ship lifted from the cracked stone, rising above the ruined towers. The sky outside was the same dim gray, but higher up, the clouds churned unnaturally. Arya's voice was steady. "They're here." Daniel adjusted the scanners. 3 large ships appeared on the display, orbiting just beyond the planet's thin atmosphere. They were black, sharp-edged, with the same red slits glowing along their hulls. 3 blockade ships, Daniel muttered. "We can't outgun them." Arya looked at him. "Then don't try. Outthink them." As they broke through the cloud layer, the blockade ships moved into a wide triangle, sealing off the direct path to space. One ship's forward guns glowed, ready to fire. Daniel pushed the Silver Edge into a hard climb, but instead of heading for the gap between the ships, he veered sharply toward the smallest of the 3. The sudden move drew its attention and it broke formation to follow. The other 2 fired, bolts streaking past. Daniel twisted the ship into a corkscrew roll, the shots missing by meters. "Hold on," he warned. They dove back into the atmosphere, the hunter ship right behind them. Daniel skimmed low over the ruins, weaving between broken towers. The hunter ship followed, matching every move. "What are you doing?" Arya asked, gripping the side of the seat. "Making them angry," Daniel said. "And when they're angry, they make mistakes." He led the hunter ship over the remains of a massive crater, then pulled up sharply. The sudden climb revealed a jagged mountain ridge ahead, one he'd marked on the way in. The Silver Edge threaded between the sharp peaks, the gap so narrow the wings scraped dust from the stone. The hunter ship tried to follow, but its larger frame clipped one of the spires. Metal tore and flames burst from its left engine. The crippled hunter craft veered off, smoke trailing. Daniel didn't slow. One down. Arya's expression softened slightly. "That was impressive. Just wait," Daniel said, pushing the throttle. They broke through the other side of the ridge and climbed hard, re-entering the thin atmosphere. The 2 remaining blockade ships adjusted course, moving to intercept. Daniel kept his heading steady, letting them think he was coming straight at them. At the last moment, he flipped the ship onto its back, cutting the main thrusters and engaging the secondary engines on the belly. The Silver Edge dropped under the line of their fire, sliding between the 2 ships in a tight spin. The enemy fire scorched empty space, and before they could turn, Daniel was already climbing past them into open orbit. Alarms blared. The ships were launching fighter craft now. 6 small hunter interceptors shot out from the blockade vessels, fanning into a pursuit line. Daniel's voice was calm. "Arya, you still have that trick from before?" Her eyes narrowed. "You mean the one that nearly knocked me unconscious? That's the one." She closed her eyes, focusing. A faint glow began to spread from her collar, wrapping her in a thin silver light. The ship's sensors flickered. Outside, the pursuing fighters hesitated, their formation breaking. Daniel swung the Silver Edge into a sharp bank, lining up a shot. "Thanks." He fired a cluster of guided charges. The missiles tracked perfectly into the confused group, detonating in a chain of bright bursts. 4 of the fighters vanished into fire. The last 2 broke away, retreating toward their carriers. The path to open space was clear now. Daniel pushed the engines to full power. The planet shrank behind them, and the hunter blockade faded into the darkness. Only when the jump coordinates were ready did he allow himself to relax. "All right, Princess, we're safe for now." Arya opened her eyes slowly, the glow fading. "Not safe, just ahead of them." Daniel smirked. "That's all I need." The Silver Edge leapt into warp, the stars stretching into lines. In the quiet hum of faster-than-light travel, Daniel glanced at her. "You hid the heart, they lost their chance, and we're still breathing. I'd call that a win." Arya's expression was unreadable. "A win for now, but the heart will call to them even from where I've placed it. They will never stop searching. Then we'll never stop running," Daniel said. Her gaze met his. "Not forever. One day they will catch up, and when they do, I need to know you'll be ready to do what must be done." Daniel leaned back in his seat, eyes on the endless dark ahead. I'll be ready, but I'd rather make sure it never comes to that. The silver edge drifted in the shadow of a small moon. Daniel had cut the engines to avoid detection. The only light in the cockpit came from the faint glow of the controls. They shouldn't have found us this fast, Daniel muttered. Arya stood beside him, her silver blue eyes fixed on the scanner. I told you. The heart calls to them, even where I've hidden it. They're close. The scanner pinged. 3 hunter ships dropping out of warp at the edge of the system. Daniel gritted his teeth. 3 again, they never learn. He powered the engines, swinging the silver edge away from the moon. The hunter ships moved to intercept, their red slits glowing like open wounds in the dark. They won't talk this time, Arya said. They never did, Daniel replied. The first hunter volley streaked toward them. Daniel rolled the ship, the plasma bolts flashing past. But the hunters were tighter this time, their formation perfect. They herded the silver edge toward the gravity well of the moon. They're pushing us, Daniel realized, trying to pin us down. Arya's voice was calm. Because this time, they don't just want me. They want you too. Daniel dove, low over the moon's surface, skimming the gray craters. The hunters followed in a tight arc, staying just out of firing range. Arya stepped closer. If we keep running, they will follow forever. If we make a stand here, we can end this. Daniel glanced at her. You mean destroy the heart? Her gaze didn't waver. Yes? They had talked about it before, how destroying the heart would release the lock on the star-forged war machines, but only if it was done the wrong way. Arya claimed she could break it safely, but it would cost her life. Daniel's jaw tightened. Not happening. It must, she said. If I die, holding it, the lock dies with me, and the Starforged remain buried forever. No, Daniel said firmly. We'll find another way. But before they could argue, the first hunter ship dove in, firing a full volley. The silver edge shook violently, alarms blaring. The rear shields were down to 40%. Daniel's mind worked fast. He could fight and maybe take down 1 or 2 ships, but the last would finish them. Unless... All right, princess, he said. We're going to end this, but my way. He angled the ship toward the deepest crater on the moon's surface. The hunters followed, their weapons lighting the shadows. Inside the crater, Daniel threaded between jagged ridges until a massive fissure opened ahead. They plunged into it, the walls narrowing. The hunters stayed on them, but the lead ship's weapons couldn't fully track in the tight space. Daniel opened the comm to Arya's cabin. I'm going to give you a shot at ending this without dying. Can you link to all 3 ships at once? Arya's voice came back steady. If I push myself, then push. She came to the cockpit, standing behind his chair. Her glow began to spread, silver light filling the cramped space. The controls flickered. Outside, the hunter ships jerked in their flight paths, their weapons stuttering. The tight canyon forced them to bunch close together. That's it, Daniel muttered, locking onto the lead ship. He armed the Silver Edge's last cluster of heavy torpedoes. Arya's breathing grew heavier. Hurry, Daniel fired. The torpedoes streaked ahead, striking the lead hunter ship square in the engines. The explosion tore it apart, the blast wave slamming the other 2 into the canyon walls. Metal shattered and fire filled the fissure. The Silver Edge roared out of the canyon into open space. Behind them, all 3 hunter ships burned. Daniel cut the engines to cool them, then turned to Arya. She was pale, her glow gone, but she was still standing. You didn't die, he said. Not today, she replied, a faint smile on her lips. But they will come again. More will come. Daniel leaned back in his seat. Then we keep moving. We stay ahead, and every time they catch us, we make sure fewer go back. Arya looked out at the stars. Until the day they stop coming, Daniel smirked. Or until we decide to take the fight to them. The Silver Edge turned toward the endless black, its engines burning bright as it vanished into the dark between the stars. This wasn't the end, but for now they had won.